Sup nerds, I'm Wes. Today on the table we've got Merchants of Andromeda coming to Kickstarter from All Play Games. So standard disclaimers, this is a Kickstarter video, so we have a prototype on the table here, so a lot of these components are going to change in the final production of the game. Some of the rules may be a little bit tweaked. I don't even have a box yet, but I've played enough of this game to give you guys a good look at what it is and why you should consider backing it. So in Merchants of Andromeda, you are each controlling a merchant faction, and your goal is to have the most money at the end of the game. Now, the actual gameplay is fairly simple. It's just an action selection game, but there is a programmatic aspect to it where you are going to have 3 cards. One card will give you a resource, one card will give you an action, and one card will be auctioned off to someone at the table. Now, the programmatic bit comes in that you are going to draw these cards one at a time, and you are going to decide if you want to use that card for its resource, for its action, or to auction it off before you draw the next card. So you'll draw, decide where it goes, then you'll draw the next one, and then draw your third card, and then you will go ahead and trigger down the line. All the cards have really 2 things on them, which is the action or the resource you will get. And you will go down the line, gaining your resource, doing your action, and then having your auction. The auctions are really fun in this game because rather than everyone just bidding up to see who's going to pay the most, you use a timer mechanic. And I believe there's going to be an app in the final version of the game, but you don't really need the app. All you need is a 20-ish second timer. The first few seconds will be for everyone to get ready, and then once the timer hits 20 and counts down, someone will say stop when it's on the number they're wanting to bid. So if they stop it at 20, they'll pay $20. If they stop it at 18, they'll pay $18. So you really have to wait everyone out. You have to decide how much you're willing to spend on it, but how much everyone else is willing to spend on it. And you want that price to get as low as possible without having somebody else beat you to the punch and buy the card. Now with the actions, there's almost like a 4X-y thing going on with explore, exterminate, expand, and exploit, and these 4 different boards on the table. So you've got your ships here that you are fighting against, and that's the enemy craft that's coming in, and you are trying to take up this board while the enemy is working their way down, and if either of you land on each other, you remove that ship from the board. But you use dice to actually place them. So you'll roll the dice, you'll pick 2 for yourself and 3 for the enemy. The enemy will activate first, and whichever number is on the die, that lane will trigger, and then you'll activate yourself as well. And there's ways to gain resources and things on this track as well as points for just having ships that you have conquered. You've got this track down here, which is the Andromeda section, and you're trying to control as much of this as possible. So it's almost like area control, even though there's not really combat. But these zones trigger based on which zone has the most tiles on it, and then whoever has the biggest clump in that. So you'll rate them first, say, well, section 4 has the most tiles, so that's going to be the first one. Section 2 has the next most, that's going to be the next one, and so on. And then whoever has the biggest cluster. So it's not necessarily how many you have, but how many you have altogether. And then there's some other ways where you can connect bridges between the 2 sections that will give you additional money as well. Over here on the planet, you've got some exploring going on because you are going to pick a random tile, flip it face up, and as long as it's not a curse, you can pick an orthogonally adjacent tile and flip that one face up, and you keep going and going and going until you either want to stop or you hit a curse. Now, if you don't hit a curse and you choose to stop, you get to take 2 of the tiles that you flipped face up, and they can either be resources or a set collecting with artifacts. And then if you hit a curse, you have to stop immediately, and you only get to take 1 tile that you flipped up. But once you've removed the tiles from the board, you will put your own tiles into those spaces and then flip everything face down again. So a little bit of memory going on, but those will also score based on how many tiles you have on the planet and the 2 moons. And then you have the resource track, which is fairly self-explanatory. As you gain resources, you'll just move up the resource track. And then there's sets where you get additional actions if you have 1 of each resource, and then at least 3 of each resource, and then at least 5 of each resource. And then the last section, which doesn't really fit into the 4X thing I mentioned earlier, is the voting. You have different senators that are all trying to win the election, and when they win, they will add a new scoring mechanic to the game or potentially change a different scoring mechanic in the game. But you have these boxes, so it's kind of blind voting. You can see where people are voting, but you have to, again, try to remember who got what vote and kind of deduce, or I mean, if you're paying attention enough, you can just know who has how many votes. But with so much going on and, you know, you're just having a good time, you do kind of end up guessing a little bit. But the cool thing is that whoever wins the election, the bonus is that that rule goes into effect. The losers of the election will actually pay out people who voted for them. So you're not necessarily just voting for who you want to win. You also want to vote so you get paid out by the losers. So that's a fun little twisty mechanic in there. And then the last thing that kind of throws wrenches in the whole thing is the event track. So mixed into the deck of cards you are drawing from are 20 event cards, and those will trigger different events throughout the game as soon as they are drawn. Most of the events have to do with scoring. So during different events and their sets, you know when it's coming up. It'll say, okay, well now we're scoring the planet. Okay, well now we're scoring resources. And each section will score multiple times throughout the game, and then once again at the end. But that does add a fun little like, oh, an event happened. So you may be like trying to do a certain action on your turn. So you put that card into the action spot because you want to take that action before it scores, and then that event pops up before you can take that action. It's a fun little wrinkle in the game that can change it up and catch you off guard, or maybe you squeak in right at the last minute. So with all that going on though, the main thing to remember is that you win by having the most money. So when we played this game, my wife, who played with me, who's a very budget conscious person, she did a really good job playing very conservatively and just had a ton of money at the end of the game. Now, me and my son, who were also playing, we just wanted to do all the things and go everywhere. So on the bidding, we were all bidding high. We won most of the auctions that happened, but it meant that we were somewhat cash poor. And now those actions are going to pay out throughout the game. So maybe it pays off, but also maybe you played more conservatively. So you have less things on the board. It looks like you're not doing as much. It may even look like you're falling behind a little bit. But in reality, you have way more money than everyone else because you're not just blowing it at the auction. It's a really fun balancing mechanic in the game that I think makes it pretty unique, and that you don't necessarily want to win everything. You don't want to do everything. Maybe you want to lose the elections, or maybe there's a rule that could really hurt you or a rule that could really help you, and so you do want to vote really hard for those rules. So it is one of those games where you don't want to overwhelm yourself with just everything going on, because on your turn, you really only have 3 decisions to make, and that's when you draw those cards, where you're going to place them in your program, and then just following your program out. Really accessible game, really fun. I feel like the kind of fun alien theme is a good little twist to it. So if that all sounds good to you, we will have a link to the Kickstarter campaign in the description down below, where you can go over there and check out, get some more info, and back Merchants of Andromeda on Kickstarter. Special thank you to our channel sponsor, Game Toppers. We love playing on Game Toppers, highly recommend them. And what else we recommend is subscribing to our channel so you'll never be bored. There's almost like a 4X-y mechanic going on, being explore, expand, exterminate, and the other X. Explore, expand, exterminate. 4X-y thing going on with explore, expand, exterminate, and exploit.